Greetings everyone, Pyrex is here. As you can see by the thumbnail presentation, this is not going to be your typical hiking video that I normally post. For a long time I've been wanting to do this series that I entitled An INTJ's Perspective. Well, for those of you who don't know what an INTJ is, it's one of 16 basic personality types that are denoted by what's called the Myers-Briggs type indicator. That breaks down human personality into 16 basic types based on 4 different oppositional qualities. The first is introversion versus extroversion. Okay, if you're more introverted, then your first letter is an I. If you're more extroverted, then your first letter is an E. The second quality is intuition versus sensing, which is basically, do you rely more on your intuition, your intuitive abilities, or your 5 senses? Third quality is thinking versus feeling. I think that one's pretty self-explanatory. Are you more of a thinker or a feeler? The fourth is a little more difficult. It's judgment versus perceiving. Judgment is not necessarily like, oh, I'm judging you. Think of it more like decisiveness. Judging is more tends towards absolution, tends towards certainty. Perceiving tends to keep the options open. Perceiving tends to be more dealing with possibilities. So of course, if you tend to more make decisive decisions and everything, then you're more judgmental, or more on the judgment side, not judgmental. Or if you like to keep your options open, you're more perceptive or perceiving. Since the inception of this specific personality indicator, they've added one that's called assertion versus turbulence. Are you more assertive or are you more turbulent? That's one that was added recently. Now, me personally, I am an INTJ, and I consider myself to be what's called a pretty solid INTJ. I have taken the Myers-Briggs type indicator 4 times throughout my life, approximately once every 10 years. Now, I means that I am introverted, and my percentage on that is 93% introverted. So I am only 7% extroverted, which basically means I want to be left alone. I like my solitude. You know, I'm not too big on social gatherings. I'm perfectly happy being by myself. Second category, intuition versus sensory versus sensing. I'm 80% intuition, meaning I pretty much look for my answers intuitively. I pretty much rely on my own inner sense of what's right or what's wrong, or what's, what my understanding is based on. Third is thinking versus feeling. Now, I'm definitely a thinker, INTJ. T is for thinking, but only 71%. That's my lowest score. Thinkers generally tend to, try to keep feelings out of it. They're kind of like the Spocks, of the world, So more logical, more reasoning, more rational. They try not to let emotion, dictate to them too much. But I've got almost 30% on feelings, so I'm pretty in touch with my feelings. Then there's judgment, judging versus perceiving. I'm 81% judging, meaning I like absolutes. I like having the answers. I like knowing what I'm talking about. And I mean, I do try to keep my possibilities open. I mean, I do, even though I might have come to an answer, I always keep that almost 20% there, and saying, well, maybe I'll learn something new. Maybe I'll acquire some new data that might alter or abridge my previous answer. And then finally is the assertive versus turbulent. Now, I tend to be more assertive, but only 69%. That actually, when I the first test that I took, I was actually turbulent. But I've been generally, since those, I've been generally moving towards assertiveness, to where I'm much more certain in my actions, much more defined. While turbulent means you're kind of like a little more chaotic, a little more maybe wishy-washy is a word you could use, a little more uncertain. So that's the basic functions. That's the basic statistics, versus introversion or extroversion, intuition versus sensing, thinking versus feeling, judging versus perceiving, and assertive versus turbulent. Now you have what's called a function stack, and each personality type is different. An INTJ's primary function is its dominant function is what's called introverted intuition. That means that our intuition we rely on so heavily. That's our main function. We search for answers within, and that gives us the ability to, when we do perceive information from out in the world, we generally tend, NI dominant people generally tend to see the underlying patterns that most people miss. We tend to see more big picture stuff. We tend to see how things are connected. We tend to see these little like missing pieces. So we're very good problem solvers on average. Our secondary function is external thinking, which means we like to take our understanding and our knowledge and we like to try to externalize it. We like to try to explain it. We like to try to be able to share it with others so that others can understand. And that's part of the whole reason for this whole series that I want to do. I'm not trying to preach. I don't think I have all the answers. Please understand that. What I'm trying to do here is I'm not trying to be popular or anything. I don't want people to say, oh, he's smart. He's like, I just want to give you some thoughts to consider, because I have what works for me. I have the answers for myself, and maybe they'll help somebody else. And that's my goal here. Not to preach, not to tell you, what the answers are, because my answers might not be right. And the truth be told, I hate giving people answers. I hate it. I want people to think for themselves. There's nothing I like less than actually just giving someone an answer, because what good does it do if they don't understand it? What good does it do them if they did not put in the time to research that answer, and find out and find some meaning in it for themselves? So that's my goal here, not to try to preach, not to try to tell you what any answers are, but to give you some things to think about, some ideas. You know what I mean? And you got to find your own answers. That's the important thing. But hopefully I can share some of my knowledge and my ideas and my concepts to help you reach those goals. And that's the whole intention of this series. Getting back to the functions, the tertiary function of an INTJ is introverted feelings. Okay, so you remember how I said about INTJs being like the Spocks of the world? Well, Spock kind of keeps away from emotions, but he has them. Well, that's very much what introverted feelings is like. We have our feelings, but we generally tend to keep them inside. We generally don't tend to externalize our emotions. We generally tend to be a little bit, some people would say, robotic. But seeing how my feelings is one of my, that's almost 30%. Well, the other ones are lower. So I do generally tend to be a little more showing of my feelings. But yes, I do very much tend to intellectualize everything. Finally, what's called the inferior function, the fourth function in the function stack, is exterior sensing. Now, INTJs, this basically means that we extroverted sensing. We generally tend to take notice of the outside world, but that's our inferior function. That's our least dominant function. So we generally tend to be withdrawn into ourselves, into our own internalized intuition. But our last function is external sensing. So because we do have to have the data come in from the outside world and go through and process into our minds and through our introverted intuition, and then out through our extroverted thinking. How we feel about it is third on the list, you know. I hope I'm making sense, because I know I'm not very good at expressing myself, mostly because I am 93% introverted and I don't usually talk to people, and that's part of the reason why I started this series as well, is to hopefully get myself better at doing this sort of thing, you know, to relating to others and such like that. So I hope that explains basically what the INTJ personality type is, and if you want to learn more about the Myers-Briggs type indicator, you know, then go to 16personalities.com or one of the other ones. That 16personalities.com is what I use, but you can take the test for yourself and find out, you know, what your basic percentages are, what your functions are, and what you're classified as. If you're interested. If not, hey, you know, it's up to you. It's your life, do what you want. But all right, so that's basically what it's like. Now, like I said, what it's like for me being an INTJ, I really like my solitude. Okay, you very, very rarely ever see, I don't think I have a single video on here to where there are other people in the video. But that's just me, because like I said, I'm 93% introverted. I'm not going to be, I mean, I'm lucky if I get, you know, half a dozen or a dozen telephone calls in a year on my home phone that aren't, you know, business related. I do some messaging on Facebook and stuff like that, and, you know, so I do try to involve myself with other people, but mostly everything I do is by myself, and that's kind of typical of a lot of INTJs. Of course, depending on your percentages in each field, in each area, you're going to have differences. Not all INTJs are the same. We're not all robots. We're not all identical. We don't all have the same programming, you know, so we are going to come to different conclusions, because some of us may be more geared towards externalizing our perception. I'm only a 19% perceiver, so I only really take notice of the outside world 20% of the time. 80% of the time I'm in my head, but someone else might be 40%. So you see how that will change the variables in there, change the input, the data. I know I'm speaking very technical, but that's just an INTJ. We do tend to speak very, you know, we do have basic qualities, you know, that INTJs all have in common, but of course those are going to vary by our percentages. So the other things about being an INTJ personality type, for me it's kind of like, I've been accused at times, I think because the introverted intuition is so strong, because we tend to notice, you know, those underlying details so much that, you know, I personally have been perceived as being somewhat psychic at times, because we can see these underlying things, and maybe that's what psychic ability is. Who knows? I mean, I could make a future episode on psychic abilities, which I may very well do, but there have been some pretty strange incidents where some things that just seem to be outside of the explanations of basic perceptual, you know, it's something, there does seem to be something to extra perception, which I said could be related to this introverted intuition, where INTJs are able to see underlying factors. I do tend to keep my emotions to myself until I get to that point to where it just like, we all know this, where our emotions just get the better of us and then we explode. Well, yes, INTJs can do that, definitely. Generally less than most people. We generally have more practice at suppressing our emotions, but we're likely to explode if we get overwhelmed as well. It has happened throughout the course of my life many times, and when it does happen to an INTJ, it typically seems pretty abrupt, because people aren't used to seeing that happen to us. So when it does happen to us, it's like, oh my God, people think we've really lost it. You know what I mean? While other people who are more emotional, you know, and they're like that consistently, they're not. It's not seen as such a deviation as it's seen with an INTJ. But luckily, it doesn't happen very much, because I don't associate with too many outside people or influences. So. Other things, yes, I'm very logical. Yes, I do a lot of researching. Yes, I daydream a lot and fantasize a lot. Not, fantasize about just anything in particular. I might fantasize about meeting a specific person that I admire and having a conversation in my head with them. This is what I mean by fantasizing. Any kind of, I might, like, what would it be like to have wings and fly? I'll watch, like, the X-Men, and I saw Angel on the one, I think it was the third, X-Men 3. I thought, wow, what would that be like? And then I'd create that whole scenario in my head, So yeah, we can be very creative in that way. And yes, I have created my own world in Dungeons and Dragons. I have created, oh my gosh, I've written several articles. In fact, that's one of the things. I'm not very good at speaking vocally, but I am very good at writing. And most people will, who have read my writing will tell you that. They'll say, wow, really insightful. So sometimes I think it would be easier for just me to write down these episodes beforehand and just read them off a paper. But that would take away from the goal of trying to become more comfortable. So I think that pretty much is it. Like I said, I will again emphasize, I don't want you to think that I think too highly of myself, that I have all the answers, anything like that. No, it is not that at all. You need to understand that all I'm hoping is that maybe my life and my experiences can somehow contribute to others. This is my way of wanting to give back through my own understanding and my own experiences. And I'll be covering different topics because INTJs tend to think about things very deeply and from very many different different directions. And so the questions like, why are we here, what's the meaning of life, or what is love, is there such thing as a soul or a spirit? All these things I've contemplated, and these are the kind of questions, these are the kind of topics that I would like to cover in future episodes. So I hope that this hasn't been too random and chaotic for you. I know that sometimes I don't come across very clearly, but that is the goal, and I want to try to probably at least in future episodes, put down a little outline of things, maybe on a board or something like that, so that I can try to keep on topic. Because the way an INTJ's mind works, sometimes we'll be on one thought and we'll be going this way, but then something will come up, and then shoot, we'll have a little shoot off. Now we got two directions to think, and then that one will boom, and very quickly it just comes spread out to where we could be on 7, 8, 9, a dozen different trains of thought, and then it gets very random and chaotic, and then we tend to speak faster. We tend to, because we're trying to get it out so much, that you'll actually see us get a little more excited, a little more animated as we try to cover all these little things that our mind are kicking out. So, in fact, I don't know, maybe you notice I got a little more animated and active there just now, just trying to explain that. So now I'm going to calm back down. All right, so like I said, just this is an experiment. I figured I'd try it out. Hopefully I'll be coherent. Hopefully I'll be able to share with you all some things to think about, some things that might help you out in your own lives, and that's the goal. So that's pretty much what I wanted to do with this first episode. Now, I can't say there'll be very often. I mean, it takes me some effort to actually even do any kind of recording. I'm not geared towards, like I said, my introversion. I tend to want to just keep to myself, and it's like all the answers, all the whatever wisdom I might have found in my life, that was all for me. My search was for me. But logic dictates to me as well. I want, if I can offer something, if something that I've achieved for myself can help others, then I want to contribute. And that's, I think, a noble goal, but I'll leave that for you to decide. All right, everyone, so thanks for taking the time to listen. As I said, again, I hope it wasn't too chaotic and confusing for you. Hopefully episodes from this point on out will be a little more clear. I wanted to keep these between 20 and 30 minutes. And so this is just about that time. So I think with that, we're going to just close it off. So thanks everyone for stopping by. Please leave me a comment and tell me if there's anything specific you'd like to know, either about my own personality type or Myers-Briggs in general. As I said, 16personalities.com. That's the place to go if you want to take the test. There are a couple other places. So you can just type in Myers-Briggs type indicator and it'll give you, and your search engine will probably give you other places to go. All right, that's it. I'm enjoying this nice, cooler, rainy day. Rainy days are my favorite. I'm going to go tend to my garden a little bit and then fix myself some dinner. So hope you all have a lovely day, and thank you. Bye now.